Hello and welcome to Cloud Learners Journey Part 8 of Azure Solutions Architect real exam questions and answers with explanation. And you can also find reference links in the description. To become an Azure Solutions Architect, you must pass AZ-104 and AZ-305 exam. You can also go through AZ-104 exam video series and links are available in the description. If you like the video, please like, share, comment and subscribe to our Cloud Learners Journey channel to help you pass AZ-305 exam and become an Azure Solutions Architect. Question number 1. You have an Azure subscription that contains two applications named App 1 and App 2. App 1 is a sales processing application. When a transaction App 1 requires shipping, a message is added to an Azure Solution account queue and then App 2 listens to the queue for relevant transactions. In the future, additional applications will be added that will process some of the shipping requests based on the specific details of the transactions. You need to recommend replacements for the storage account queue to ensure that each additional application will be added to read the relevant transactions. What should you recommend? And the options are A. One Azure Data Factory Pipeline, B. Multiple storage account queues, C. One Azure Service Bus Queue, D. One Azure Service Bus Topic. And the correct option is D. One Azure Service Bus Topic. A queue allows processing of a message by a single consumer. In contrast to queues, topics and subscriptions provide a one-to-many form of communication in a publish and subscribe pattern. Next, question number 2. You have an Azure subscription named Sub1 that is linked to an Azure AD tenant named Contoso.com. You plan to implement two ASP.NET Core apps named App1 and App2 that will be deployed to 100 virtual machines in Sub1. Users will sign in to App1 and App2 by using their Contoso.com credentials. App1 requires read permissions to access the calendar of a signed-in user. App2 requires write permissions to access the calendar of a signed-in user. You need to recommend an authentication and authorization solution for the apps. The solution must meet the following requirements. First requirement, use the principle of least privilege. Second requirement, minimize administrative effort. What should you include in the recommendation? Answer area for authentication, it's application registration in Azure AD. For authorization, it's delegated permissions. To delegate identity and access management functions to Azure AD, an application must be registered with an Azure AD tenant. When you register your application with Azure AD, you are creating an identity configuration for your application that allows it to integrate with Azure AD. Next, question number 3. You need to recommend a solution to generate a monthly report of all the new Azure Resources Manager resource deployments to your Azure subscription. What should you include in the recommendations? And the options are A. Azure Activity Log, B. Azure Arc, C. Azure Analysis Services, D. Azure Monitor Metrics. And the correct option is A. Azure Activity Log. Azure Monitor Activity Log is a platform log in Azure that provides insight into subscription level events. The activity log includes information like when a resource is modified or a virtual machine is started. Next, question number 4. You have an application that is used by 6,000 users to validate their vacation requests. The application manages its own credentials stored. Users must enter a username and password to access the application. The application doesn't support identity providers. You plan to upgrade the application to use single sign-on authentication by using an Azure Active Directory application registration. Which SSO method should you use? A. Header-based, B. SAML, C. Password-based, D. OpenID Connect. And the correct option is C. Password-based. On-premises applications can use a password-based method for SSO. This choice works when applications are configured for application proxy. With the password-based SSO, users sign in to the application with a username and password the first time they access it. After the first sign-in, Azure AD provides the username and password to the application. Next, question number 5. You plan to deploy an application that will use an Azure storage account. You need to deploy the storage account. The storage account must meet the following requirements. First requirement, store the data for multiple users. Second requirement, encrypt each user's data by using a separate key. Third requirement, encrypt all the data in the storage accounts by using customer managed keys. What should you deploy? And the options are A. Files in a premium file share storage account, B. Blobs in general purpose V2 storage account, C. Blobs in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account, D. Files in a general purpose V2 storage account. And the correct option is B. Blobs in a general purpose V2 storage account. You can specify a customer provided key on blob storage operations. A client making a read or write request against blob storage can include an encryption key on the request for granular control over how blob data is encrypted and decrypted. Next, question number 6. Your company has the divisions shown in the following table. You have the columns, division, Azure subscription, Azure AD tenant. East division with subscription sub 1 with Azure AD tenant Contessa.com. West division with subscription subs 2 with Azure AD tenant Fabricam.com. Sub 1 contains an Azure App Service web app named App 1. App 1 uses Azure AD for single tenant user authentication. Users from Contessa.com can authenticate to App 1. You need to recommend a solution to enable users in the Fabricam.com tenant to authenticate to App 1. What should you recommend? And the correct options are A. Configure the Azure AD provisioning services. B. Enable Azure AD pass-through authentication and update the sign-in endpoint. C. Configure supported account types in the application registration and update the sign-in endpoint. D. Configure Azure AD join. And the correct option is C. Configure supported account types in the application registration and update the sign-in endpoint. You can configure app to be either single tenant or multi-tenant during app registration in Azure. Ensure the zero trust principle of least privilege access so that your app can only request permissions it needs. Next, question number 7. Your company has the division shown in the following table. Columns, division, Azure subscription, Azure AD tenant. East division with subscription sub 1 with Azure AD tenant Contessa.com. West division with subscription sub 2 with Azure AD tenant Fabricam.com. Sub 1 contains an Azure App Service web app named App 1. App 1 uses Azure AD for single tenant user authentication. Users from Contessa.com can authenticate to App 1. You need to recommend a solution to enable users in the Fabricam.com tenant to authenticate to App 1. What should you recommend? And the options are A. Configure Azure AD join. B. Configure Azure AD identity protection. C. Use Azure AD entitlement management to govern external users. D. Configure assignments for the Fabricam.com users by using Azure AD Privileged Identity Management PIM. And the correct option is C. Use Azure AD Entitlement Management to govern external users. When a user who isn't yet in your directory requests access and is approved, they are automatically invited into your directory and assigned access. When their access expires, if they have no other access package assignment, their B2B accounts in your directory can be automatically removed. Next, question number 8. You're designing an application that will aggregate content for users. You need to recommend a database solution for the application. The solution must meet the following requirements. Support SQL commands, support multi-master writes, guarantee low latency read operations. What should you include in the recommendations? And the correct options are A. Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. B. Azure SQL databases that use active geo-replication. C. Azure SQL Database Hyperscale. D. Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. And the correct option is A. Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. It is a real-time access with fast read and write latencies globally. Multi-region writes and data distribution to any Azure region independently and elastically scale storage and throughput across any region. Next, question number 9. You have an Azure subscription that contains a basic Azure Virtual WAN, name Virtual WAN 1, and the virtual hubs shown in the following table. Columns, name, location. Hub 1 is in US East location. Hub 2 is in US West location. You have an ExpressRoute circuit in the US East Azure region. You need to create an ExpressRoute association to Virtual WAN 1. What should you do first? And the options are A. Upgrade Virtual WAN 1 to standard. B. Create a gateway on Hub 1. C. Enable the ExpressRoute Premium add-on. D. Create a hub virtual network in US East. And the correct option is upgrade Virtual WAN 1 to standard. The basic Azure Virtual WAN doesn't support ExpressRoute. You have to upgrade to standard. Next, question number 10. You have an Azure subscription that contains a storage account. An application sometimes writes duplicate files to the storage account. You have a PowerShell script that identifies and deletes duplicate files in the storage account. Currently, the script is run manually after approval from the operations manager. You need to recommend a serverless solution that performs the following actions. First action, runs the script once an hour to identify whether duplicate files exist. Sends an email notification to the operations manager requesting approval to delete the duplicate files. Third action, process email response from the operations manager specifying whether the deletion was approved. Fourth action, runs the script if the deletion was approved. What should you include in the recommendation? And the options are A. Azure Logic Apps and Azure Event Grid. B. Azure Logic Apps and Azure Functions. C. Azure Pipelines and Azure Service Fabric. D. Azure Functions and Azure Patch. The correct option is B. Azure Logic Apps and Azure Functions. You can schedule a partial script with Azure Logic Apps. When you want to run code that performs a specific job in your Logic Apps, you can create your own function by using Azure Functions. Thank you for watching part 8 of Azure Solutions Architect Real Exam Questions and Answers. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe and comment to our channel for more related topics. We look forward to continuing the journey with you in next videos. Thank you.